How students celebrate Women's History Month, an HPU seniors experience in the ROTC, plus why students are choosing Caffey Hall next year for their university housing. That's what's next on Q News. Welcome to Q News. I'm Byron Pitts, the journalist in residence here at High Point University. I'll be joining our Q News team this week to report on what's happening on and around HPU's campus. What do you think of when the month of March is mentioned? Maybe March Madness, St. Patrick's Day? Well, regardless of your initial thought, March is Women's History Month. But how does one celebrate Women's History Month? Q News reporter Alex Gibson spoke with an HPU student about how she celebrates.
In the month of March in the United States, women have been trailblazing for quite some time, from Abigail Adams to Susan B. Anthony, Sojourner Truth, to Harriet Tubman, and Amelia Earhart to Rosa Parks. How does one celebrate Women's History Month?
I think Women's History Month should be celebrated by spending it with the important women in your life, whether you have you can spend it with your mom, your grandma, or girlfriend, or whoever. And I think being surrounded by the women that mean the most to you is a perfect way to celebrate it.
While Women's History Month seems to be a good idea, a question still remains. Is a special month needed to celebrate women? And is 1 month enough?
I would say that it's great that women's history has a full month of March to really focus on that and highlight different historical figures, but it doesn't make it, just because you have a month dedicated to it doesn't mean it's an excuse to not talk about it outside of that month. For example, Black History Month. We talk about it in the month of February and highlight all these black figures, but just because you do it in February doesn't mean you shouldn't do it in March, April, May, whenever. I think the same thing about Women's History Month, that I'm glad there is a month that it's recognized and people are like, oh, by the way, remember this happened, and all these cool women are doing all these cool things. But that 1 month does show awareness, and I like that, but we should be talking about it all the time.
Women should be celebrated year-round, but people should use the month of March especially to reflect on the achievements and contributions of women.
And Alex joins us now. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First, what was your biggest takeaway from the story?
I felt like it was important to cover Women's History Month because I feel like women are underappreciated, and I feel like it was good to shed a light on Women's History Month because I don't know if a lot of people know that it's in the month of March.
Sure. Is there something in particular you think that one of the takeaways from you, something you didn't know going in that you now know?
Well, I did a lot of research individually, and I saw something like 7 countries in the world, including the United States, does not fully honor maternity leave for women, which I think is crazy because it's incredible that women give birth to human beings,
right,
that they come out of their bodies and whatnot. And I feel like I said, women are underappreciated, and I feel like it was important for me to do this story.
Yeah. Very nice. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. The Reserve Officers Training Corps, ROTC, is a program that allows college students to graduate as a U.S. Army officer. ROTC programs offer broad opportunities, and scholarships are always available. Q News reporter John Hurrell got a chance to look into the world of ROTC through the eyes of an HPU senior.
Kleinchuster, I am a senior at High Point University in the Army ROTC program here. What actually led me for myself would be my faith in God, and so I one day was freaking out. I'm like, how the heck am I going to pay for High Point as a journalism major? And so basically at that point, God kind of led me on a path of faith, and I started proclaiming things in faith like, God, I'm never going to be in debt. You're going to pay for every penny. I won't have to pay for any of my school. And just spoke that into existence, and God's peace came over me. Next day, I woke up to a phone call, and I usually never pick up the phone unless I know who it is on the other side. But something in my spirit said, pick that up. And so I answered it, and it was a recruiter on the other side, and they said, hey, join the reserves. We'll pay for every penny of your college. You won't have to pay any dime. You'll be debt-free. Word for word what I had said, or what I had prayed the day before, which was really exciting. The way I've dealt with the pressure being in ROTC has definitely been a learning curve from the beginning. So when I first joined in, I have taken an average of 21 credits every single semester for the past 6 semesters. So that's a lot of time out of my hands. A lot of it was time management. I had horrible time management my sophomore year. I got an average of maybe 3 or 4 hours of sleep every single night. But truly, the discipline and everything that's gone into that, the discipline and the recognition that this is my life, this is not to be played around with. And so forcing yourself to go to bed early, prioritizing your work instead of hangout time, whatnot, it definitely is a challenge. There's definitely the factor that I want to be able to go out when everybody's going out and just enjoy friends. There definitely is a pressure there.
And John joins us now. Really good job. I had a chance to watch it earlier. Why'd you make the choice to focus in only on David?
Well, I made the choice to focus in on David because when I went through these interviews, I had the chance to tell the story of 3 separate people. But as I tried to weave those, those waves through, it didn't really seem to match up. And the story that was actually more convincing was just the story of David and just the story of his faith and the story of how he decidedly, went into ROTC. And I felt like that was more impactful than trying to force together some kind of monstrous amalgamation of all the different parts.
No, it makes sense, right? Because a lot of times with storytelling, if you tell the story of one, it represents the many. So is David the exception to the rule? I mean, I'm sure they're all exceptional young people. Is he exception to the rule? Does he symbolize the overall spirit of the ROTC on campus?
Yeah, I would say that David really symbolizes just what ROTC on campus, just ROTC in the country is in general. It's just a group of bright young people who not only want to make themselves better and have that opportunity to graduate as a U.S. Army officer, but it also allows them the chance to really just grow as people.
Sure.
And so David is not really an exception. David is the standard, and David is what you see when you look at all the other ROTC people here on campus.
I asked this question as a person of faith, but I asked this question as a journalist, and speaking to a fellow journalist. Was it awkward at all for you to make the choice to allow him to speak so openly about that particular part of his life, right? In this world where some people potentially could be uncomfortable about that.
Yeah, for me personally, no, not at all.
Because?
Well, I myself, I'm a person of faith. I grew up in a Catholic home. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten through 8th grade. So faith has been a big part of my life. So when he decided to go into faith and talk about that, I was more than welcoming and more than happy to allow him to talk about that. And
Sure, it makes sense, right? Because I mean, part of all of us as journalists, we bring our own sort of life experience, and our own life experience sort of shapes our level of expertise. So certainly as a person of faith, you kind of knew the shorthand of the conversation. How do you think he's going to feel about the piece when he sees it?
I think he's gonna be happy, overjoyed. He's been hyping me up throughout the week whenever I talk about it with him, and so I think he should be overjoyed. And I think when he sees it, he's just gonna be a big smile on his face.
Absolutely. One of my standards whenever I do stories, right? Because as journalists, it's not our jobs to be fans or even friends with the people who we profile. But I always think, like, one of my goals is always when the story airs, I could be sitting on the couch next to that person and their family and be comfortable with what I reported. Whether it was glowing or critical, whatever it was the truth. It was fact-based and it offered context. So good for you. Did you have a conversation with the other students who you interviewed but didn't choose them?
Well, in my written piece, I did talk to.
Oh, so there's a written component.
Yes, there's a written component.
And where will people see that?
That would be on the Q News network on the website. So
that's a promo.
You can see it on the website. And the 2 other people I talked to, one of them goes to Providence, and he talked about his ROTC experience, and the other one decidedly dropped out of ROTC and kind of talked about why he decided to do that. So it didn't tend to make sense with the other story that I had going on. So I put them all in the written and decided to make just the story element about David.
Makes sense. And that's the beauty for us just as journalists, right? To have the options of different platforms to put our work on, and also gives people different places to see it and consume the information. Really, really nice report. Really nice. I just had one or two more questions. The video, the images, is that something you took or something they provided?
Actually, that's all stuff that David gave me. All the photography that you see in there and all of the video you see, that's actually done by David. That's all his photography, and he was very gracious enough as to send it to me and allow me to use it for the package. But yes, all that stuff was all David.
And final question, this is more like helping the viewers understand how the sausage is made, right? So oftentimes when we do interviews, the person isn't looking directly to camera, they're looking off camera talking to us. Why did you make the choice to have them speak directly to camera?
I honestly think it gives a more personal connection. I don't think, I feel like I could have done that same exact story, but it's framed a bit differently, and maybe he's not looking at the camera directly. It doesn't come off the same way. When you have that line of sight constantly being put onto the camera, it feels like you might get a little bit awkward. You're like, oh, this person's looking at me, even though they're not really looking at you. So it gives it that more personal. It's kind of what I was going for, that personal feel. And just kind of, it works better with the story that I was trying to tell with the, faith, that personal, all that kind of stuff. And it just kind of worked that way.
But I love that, though, that you were intentional about that. You made choices. Good for you. Nice work.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Selecting housing at HPU can be a competitive process. One dorm, Caffey Hall, tends to fill up quickly as many students appreciate the quality of living it offers. Q News reporter Lauryn Green spoke with a few students on why they choose Caffey.
As HPU students begin to select housing for next year, Caffey Hall is one of the most commonly selected dormitories among upperclassmen.
People choose Caffey because there's a lot of big-sized beds. People love that. And it's a clean space. And the bathrooms where they have the showers are really pretty.
While the immaculate suite style is part of what attracts many upperclassmen to Caffey, they also enjoy the different amenities that Caffey has to offer.
They have a kitchen, which a lot of people like to cook on, like a community kitchen for everyone. They also have like theaters, study rooms, and they're also newly built. So I think that's a lot of the reasons why Caffey is a great place to stay.
With Caffey being one of the more newer dorms at HPU, other upperclassmen agree that it provides them with a more modern and upscale college lifestyle.
I like Caffey just because it's super fun and colorful and open and modern, and like anything modern luxury looks like.
As the room reservation process for next year approaches, a lot of students have Caffey at the top of their list.
And Lauryn joins us now. Thank you so much. So you were telling me we were off camera that you live in Caffey.
I do. I've lived there for over a year now, and I'll be living there next year too.
Right. So you had your own experience with the place, and it is nice. Now, why did you choose that story? Was it assigned to you as a story that you came up with?
Well, I remember last year I was looking for a spot on campus, and that was the only available dorm at that time. And ever since then, I've just loved it. I live in a 4-person suite, which I think I personally like better than the 2-person suites.
And so why did you choose this story? Of all the stories you could have done on campus, why this one?
Well, I just know that Caffey is very competitive because I've personally had not extremely difficult experiences trying to get back into Caffey, but I know that it fills up very quickly. So I wanted to highlight that and interview different people about why they love Caffey so much, because it does offer a lot of amenities.
Yeah. So there's a school of thought in our business, right, as journalists. There's sometimes that I always encourage young reporters that when you go to a story, tell me something I'm only going to know because you were there. So tell me what you think some of the choices are that you made that, say, another classmate, another journalism student wouldn't have made to include an image, a soundbite, a character. What's an example in this piece that something occurred in this piece only because you were there?
Well, I know in some of the B-roll I have, there's pictures of inside of my suite, and I think that was beneficial since I lived there too, and because I wanted people to see the interior of it as well. And the other amenities like the kitchen, the gym, and everything, I think that was more convenient, and I chose that because I know that unlike some other dorms here, Cafe offers that. So that I think really accentuates the whole like ambiance of the building itself.
Yeah. Any restrictions? Like were you not allowed to, because of issues of privacy, to kind of roam randomly shooting pictures of things?
No, not at
No?
all.
Okay. What part of the piece are you proudest of?
I think I'm proudest, I'm most proud, excuse me, of the first shot and the last shot, because I personally like the last shot the best because it shows the fountain and the outside of Cafe. And in my room, we have a great view of the fountain. So like I can sit out in the common area for hours and just stare at it. So I thought it was a great way to conclude the video.
Nice. So for giving some insight to our viewers watching, how many days did it take you to shoot this?
It took me 2 days to film this.
And how long did it take you to edit it?
Honestly, probably 2 hours.
Good for you. Good for you. Now, were you under deadline pressure?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. What was the deadline? Was it day of deadline? You had a couple of days to work on it, or?
Actually, funny you should ask that because I submitted this project a week before it was due because I think it was due on the around the 20th, around that time. But I submitted it a week early because I didn't know he had changed the deadline.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, very nice job.
Thank you.
It's good talking to you.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. After the break, historic overview of gas prices throughout the years and what people can expect for the future. Plus, the internet word game that has taken over the New York Times and everyone's brain. That's what's up next on Q News. Frustration across America continues to rise alongside gas prices, and many are claiming gas has never been higher. But how can we understand the historic price range patterns of gasoline? And how can we expect prices to lower? Q News reporter Dave Kleinchuster spoke with an HPU student and faculty member about their perspective on the issue.
Gas is supposed to be. So when the price of gas exceeds our expectations, it may cause panic to the average American consumer.
For example, the price in steak goes up. What do you eat? You switch to chicken. If the price of chicken goes up, well, maybe you go to hamburger. And so I think one of the things that's unique about gasoline is that you can't simply go to everything else.
Gasoline adjusted for inflation in today's dollars typically oscillates between $2 and $4 a gallon. When inflation within the oil industry reaches above the $4 mark, that is when the oil industry takes the initiative to increase fracking and energy production in effort to increase supply to match the demand.
Gasoline may be more expensive than it was 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. Since gas prices shot up to over $4 a gallon, it went to $4.50 a gallon. Now it's back to below $4 a gallon. When you look at those prices, it's important to hold those into context. If we were to adjust for inflation, let's say going back to the 1950s, right? What you'd find is if you're not talking about gas is up 50 cents a gallon, which sounds really large, but if we actually shifted to percentages, we would find different numbers. And what I would just say is when you're comparing prices over time and across places, you need to take into account inflation.
Although the market is created to operate in this manner, it still affects everyday lives.
I haven't been able to fill up a full tank because I'm not making enough where I can actually fill up a full tank, and I have to budget it more so with my lifestyle.
Whether choosing to save money by carpooling or simply prioritizing the necessity of every trip taken in your vehicle, the oil industry is responding to this inflation to lower the cost of getting you from point A to point B. David Kleinchuster, Q News.
And David joins us now. I would think for a lot of viewers, that's like the most significant piece in the show, because like everyone's having to deal with these crazy gas prices.
Absolutely, and that's something that we're all facing today, and biggest issue is what can we do about it?
Yeah.
Right.
What made you choose this topic?
For me, I wanted to, one, get an understanding, not that, oh my gosh, what is going on, who can we blame? Because I think that's one thing that we tend to do, whether it's a Democrat in office or Republican in office, somebody's going to be blaming someone, but what's really going on? And so looking at the historical factors due to inflation, how since the 60s, prices have oscillated between $2 and $4, but also the reasonings for that. And so it's not just issues globally with Russia, but there's also ongoing humanitarian crises. Saudi Arabia, where they had their conflicts with Yemen and their gas lines were bombed. Also the Iranian nuclear deal, where they're using that to leverage us, their gas, to force us and blackmail us into saying, okay, you can have this opportunity to start producing nuclear weapons so that we can lower our prices.
Now, I want to talk about, because as our viewers know, you were the character in the piece earlier in the show. And then the stories about your participation in the ROTC program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your commitment to our great nation. And you talk very openly and proudly about your faith. Was that hard for you to make that choice to go on camera and talk about being a man of God?
Absolutely not. I think that's one thing that you have to take pride in. Is one, we all got to be appreciative of everybody else's faiths and religions, but also for me is one thing that God taught me from an early age is to be unashamed. So how can you truly live out that life, claim to be someone, if you are too ashamed to live it? And so for myself, I'm a youth group leader at my church, and so I get to minister, pour into those kids there. I was really poured into at a young age, the same way. And so pursuing that, love the Lord, my relationship with God is ultimately the number one thing I've had. God led me to journalism. I came to school as a neuroscientist.
Wow.
Neuroscience path.
Journalists, we're
right.
not that smart, brother.
Right. Right. And so one thing that God really taught me is that, I've gifted you a voice. Another thing, too, is I was actually born deaf. And so what Satan uses for evil, God turns for good. So it took me 10 years of speech therapy to learn how to talk.
We are having church, ladies and gentlemen.
And so it took me 10 years to learn how to talk. But the biggest thing from that is God has enabled me now to speak. So why would I be ashamed of the voice God's given me?
Amen. For those who might consider almost sort of a conflict of interest, how can one be a man of faith, want to serve the country in the military, and be a journalist, right? Because for some people, they would think, oh, those three things have nothing in common.
It's a lot. It's definitely been a journey of faith for me, and just my pursuit of God is, when you have relationship with any person, you want to spend that time, you get to hear from them. And so I've learned so much more. Yes, I've been called to speak. I love to speak, but also pursuing journalism has perfected and continues to grow my ability to speak and my opportunities to speak. And so every opportunity I have is just another greater opportunity to lead, where God led me to the Army as well, where God is training me to lead. And so I've have the opportunity. I'm in the reserves currently as well as ROTC. So I actually shadow with second lieutenants currently, and I help lead a platoon of 40 servicemen and women. And so I'm learning the skills to speak as a journalist, but also the ability to lead. I don't know what God's going to do with that, but that's the thing, is we continue day by day. It's not our job to, worry about tomorrow, because today has enough to worry about on its own. So how can we learn today to continue on?
Yeah. I mean, I've been a war correspondent in my career, and I spent lots of time with military people, so I admire your work. Does any part of that choice scare you? What that could mean for you, what that could mean for your parents, your family? No, I think we've come to terms. My mom cried once, and then I'm like, all right, now we're good. But other than that, I know Trust me, your father cried. He might not show you, but he was crying too.
Probably. It was a firm handshake, well done, and probably off in the corner somewhere. But no, the biggest thing is I'm not afraid whatever happens. I'm here for a reason. I've gone through everything I've gone through for a reason, and I know that's going to be used for a reason. And so I'm not ashamed whatever happens. Well, thank you for your witness. Thank you for your commitment to service. Thank you and for your support. Nice story. Thank you. All right. A web-based word game released in October 2021 has taken over the internet and our brains. The game is known as Wordle. Players have 6 attempts to guess a random 5-letter word as quickly as possible. This simple brain game has resulted in a social media frenzy and a cultural phenomenon. Q News reporter Anna Harris spoke with an HPU student and a professor of game design to learn more about the trend.
A web-based word game created and developed by software engineer Josh Wardle has taken over the country, leaving people hooked.
So I first heard about Wordle when I went home for Christmas break. All of my family was there, and it was actually my grandma was the one that first brought it up to me. And I got right into it and have not stopped ever since.
People like Reese have made this game a part of their morning routine, completing the word game right when they wake up to get their brain working.
It's a game that really tests your brain. I'll be honest, when I first started, it took me a lot longer to think about 5-letter words. Now I can just list them off like it's nothing. And it's just one of those things that if you do it every morning, it's just something to get your mind going. And for me, that's a great start to my day.
Completing the daily Wordle might be a way to keep your brain moving, but some people might have a different reason as to why they keep coming back.
So people play games for different reasons, and different games, you know, try to reach different types of players. But I think this game really does touch on people that are drawn to achievement and also connection, because it has the share option at the end. So you can share it in your social media feeds, you can text it to your friends. So yeah, I think this game is definitely designed for those types of players specifically.
Whether or not this phenomenon will last is still in question, but like other popular word games, it has its potential.
I do think Wordle has some staying power. You know, I think that certainly it peaked, you know, early and became very popular, and I don't know if everyone will keep playing it, but I think it's going to secure enough players that, like the crossword puzzle, they're going to come back to it day after day and keep playing.
If you haven't already tried Wordle, visit the New York Times website to test your knowledge.
And Anna joins us now. I have to tell you, I knew nothing about it, had never heard of it before.
Really?
I'm an old man, so it just didn't cross my universe. And so did I pronounce it correctly? Pronounce it?
Wordle.
Wordle.
It's hard to say.
Right? Now, how'd you first hear about Wordle?
I first heard about Wordle just through the grapevine. I had friends that were starting to play it. I was like, I have no idea what this is. I'm not someone that plays like a lot of games on my phone, so I was like, oh, like I don't even know if I'll like it. But I did it one day and I was like, wait, this is actually kind of like cool. It's kind of addicting. And it's addicting because you can only do it once a day, so it makes you want to come back the next day.
Is there only once a day?
Only once a day.
So the program is designed that way. You can't. Okay.
I think it's kind of like a strategy to keep people coming back, which is a good strategy on their part. And there's also different.
It's like a 5-part series on Netflix, right?
I know.
Okay. All right.
Keeps people hooked. And there's different versions of Wordle. So there's like one called Wordle, and that's geography.
Okay.
There's one Hurrell, which is like music.
Okay.
And then I think there's a couple other ones. Nerdle is math. I would be horrendous at that one.
Right. Is there one like based on like pizza toppings? I might be competitive
Probably.
with that one.
We could probably figure. We can invent it and be the next. We can be the next big thing. Yes. New business partners.
Exactly. So what made you choose this story?
I chose this story because I normally do a ton of hard news stories, and investigative journalism is what I'm passionate about. But I was like, I need to like try something different and get kind of creative with it. So since Wordle is such a popular thing right now, I'm like, I'll just kind of make my own high point twist on it and interview a professor of game design, a student, and see what they think about it. And I just did it just to do something completely different from what I'm used to.
Good for you. And right, because people ask, what is news? And certainly news is investigative work in those hard and difficult stories, but it's also light fare. It's also, you know, things that people, how they occupy their time.
Right.
So good for you. How long did it take you to shoot it?
I would say it took me 2 separate days of filming.
And how'd you choose the characters that you chose?
I chose my friend Reese because we have had a lot of conversations about Wordle. I'm like, hey, you would know how to talk about it. So would you like to do an interview? He said yes.
Okay.
As far as game design, I wanted someone to have the perspective of a gaming or just a gaming perspective and someone who's very knowledgeable on that. I know I'm not. So I knew that professor and I had her previously.
How do you process that, right? That's a good question as journalists, right? So you go into, we do stories, oftentimes we know very little about it. Were you intimidated by that? Like doing something about a subject matter you don't really know that much about?
It can be very intimidating. I know I did a package earlier this semester on Teslas and how using autopilot might be dangerous. And I know like nothing about cars, but I knew that there was a lot going on in the news about autopilot with Teslas. So I kind of read about it and was like, okay, I know someone that has a Tesla, so let me talk to them first. And then I talked to XYZ. And I think it's just doing your research first. And then finding the people to talk about it, because then it's like, okay, I need to like at least know somewhat, so I know I'm talking to the right kind of people.
So you have to invest time in do the stories. You know, this is one of my favorite stories visually in the whole show.
Thank you.
What's your favorite picture? What was your favorite image? Do you remember it from the piece? Like you said, if you can't watch the whole thing, look at this. I killed in this one shot here. Was
I really liked my stand-up on that particular package.
Right?
I'm trying to
Creative.
get creative on how to do different
Very.
stuff.
I caught that, like a little sequencing.
Yes.
That I could see like that your hand moved in the
Yes.
thing. Good for you.
Yes, I'm trying to get creative because I think watching packages like that are just way more intriguing than just
Yep.
standing in front of a camera. But of course, you have the stories that sometimes you have to just be standing at the camera.
Yeah.
Because that can kind of take
Sure,
away
sure.
from the point.
Yeah.
But-
To me, is that great story, and it symbolizes, I think, what's so wonderful about this school in general and about the communications program, that it was sort of intentional, it was creative. So good for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And can we brag about your job after college?
Sure, if you want to.
All right. So tell everyone where you're going to work after school.
So I will be at WCSC Live 5 News in Charleston, South Carolina, and I'll be a multimedia journalist.
How awesome is that?
Yes, thank you.
Your parents proud?
Yes.
What did they say?
They're insanely excited because it's a job, and
Amen.
It's a job, and I'm going to be getting paid.
Amen.
And it's in a great location.
Yeah, it is.
So I love the city of Charleston.
Have you been there much?
Yes, I vacationed there a couple times. I was
Nice.
there a couple weeks ago over spring break. Got an apartment, so now I got to get furniture and get it all figured
Right.
out.
So viewers say, I knew her when. I saw
Yeah.
her when she was in college. All right.
Exactly.
Thank you, my friend. Nice
Yes,
job.
thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And thank you all for watching this special edition of Q News. I'm Byron Pitts. Up next, an update from Q Sports. Thanks for the company.